Good afternoon, everybody. Looks like we're live and ready to go. I think in the interest of time, we'll just get right into it. I'd like to officially convene today's sewage disposal working group meeting and welcome everybody. First of all, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us today. Special thanks to our subcommittee chairs. I know you've all been working feverishly for the betterment of Connecticut residents. And I know that at times the process may not have been all that easy, but I appreciate the effort that you're all doing. I know you're all incredibly busy in your own rights and have been taking time away from work and family to be part of this process. So thank you very much for all that you're doing. I'd also like to thank the state agency representatives that are with us who have been working closely with our subcommittees, lending their institutional knowledge and expertise. We appreciate you and what you're doing to help our work along. Just a little housekeeping. We originally planned for this meeting to be about an hour and a half long. Um, I don't expect that we'll need that allotted time. So immediately concluding this meeting, the Regs and Legal Subcommittee will be using the remainder of our time, if there is any, for their own subcommittee meeting. So we would ask that the folks that are part of the Regs and Legal Subcommittee to stay on. Others can either also stay on or exit as you see fit. Um, Before we go any further, Sonia, I'd like to see if you have any other opening comments.
No opening comments.
Great, thank you. I don't think John is with us today. I'm not sure if there are any legislators with us here today. I don't see any, so we'll just continue on. So let's just go right through the agenda. The goal today is to hear reports from our subcommittee chairs and to kind of gauge the progress that we've had to date and give the entire working group the opportunity to ask questions and have a conversation about the work that's being done to date. So with that being said, I'd ask David Potts to present on behalf of the Nitrogen Environment Subcommittee.
Well, thank you. The group's put in a lot of time and a lot of thought. Ultimately, we've received really one proposal that would provide a housing cost benefit while theoretically not changing the health and environment effects from what the DPH proposed last year. This concept, generally speaking, would also prevent the subdivision of lots to avoid the DEP jurisdiction, among other things. Some group members agreed with this approach and others disagreed. The feedback now, I think, is being considered for possible modification to address the concerns. That said, the group has achieved consensus, at least regarding increasing funding for the DEP and DPH, really to streamline and accelerate project review processes. Consensus also exists for the tracking of system performance of all DEP and DPH traditional and advanced treatment systems, including the development of a more robust and accessible database like that which is utilized in Mass. This data set would ultimately be the basis of and the way forward for broader advanced treatment system approval and use in Connecticut. Without this information, it's simply hard to move forward. And then we're working on scheduling a meeting next week to more formalize, I guess, our recommendations. Any questions?
Before we open up to questions, if there are any additional comments from Nitrogen Environment Subcommittee members, feel free to raise your hands. I don't see any. So if there are any questions for David from the broader working group, we'd love to field those now. Don't be shy. All right. Sounds like everybody's on board with everything you said, David. So I'll take I'll take everybody's silence as tacit compliance.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess we can move on then. The Process and Funding Subcommittee is chaired by Matt Gilchrist. If Gilchrist is online,
Here.
feel free to provide your report.
Sorry for my appearance. I'm actually moving my mom out of her house for 25 years today. So I'm taking a little break to talk to you guys. But our working group has been fairly productive. We are not quite ready to fully share our recommendations and observations. We had a productive meeting yesterday, and we'll have another one next week. And my goal is by the end of next week to have it in writing so we can share it with everyone. We think that the um, the code advisory committee is going to be a very strong tool going forward for observations. So we're doing some more research into that. Really hoping to maybe guide that group to be a lot like the code and standards um, committee that the building officials have. Our focus is on training and efficiency of organization, making sure that we have subject matter experts who are allowed to focus on, um, their silo of work. Making some recommendations on how to clean up kind of some of the mission bleed over that has happened in the last couple of years, like pools and campgrounds, and getting that away from the people that need to focus on wastewater and septic systems. So we're progressing nicely, and we'll have full written report next week.
Thank you, Matt. Is there anyone else from the subcommittee, the Process and Funding Subcommittee, that would like to provide any additional feedback? If not, then is there anybody from the broader working group that has any questions for Matt? Well, once again, Matt, it sounds like everybody agrees with what you guys are up to. All right. With all that being said, then let's go on to Sonia and the Regulations and Legal Subcommittee.
So some of my guys are out today, so I said I would, provide the report for us. We centered a lot of our last conversations on actually funding and process and working with funding and process, explaining the limitations that we have in local and state agencies, really outlining because our group is made up of state agency people as well as local health sanitarians. We felt that having that conversation with process and funding would be helpful. Um, Today, we'll be starting to work on the actual regulations, so I can't really say much about that yet. We do have an outline that we're going to go through, and as well as some topics that were suggested to go through the actual regulations, find out what needs to be changed in that section, and have that conversation, which is going to be happening after this meeting. That's it right now. Again, a lot of it was discussed on very early on about the funding and the structure of how septic is currently being regulated.
Thank you, Sonia. Anyone else from the subcommittee that would like to add any additional information? Anybody from the working group have any questions from Sonia? All right. Well, I guess that was pretty quick. So as far as other business, I think it's what's apparent here at the moment is that I think we're all kind of a little behind our stated goal of having a concrete list of recommendations to move up the ladder to the working group at this point. But it sounds like we're all in the process of honing in. So I think a goal of our next meeting of having a bulleted list of recommendations from each subcommittee to have prior to the meeting to be distributed at the meeting of the entire working group might be a goal we should all endeavor to do. Um, with that being said, I think our next meeting would typically be scheduled for 2 weeks from now. However, I believe that's Christmas Eve. So I think Sonia and John and myself will take a look at the calendar and coordinate with Peter and figure out when our next meeting will be. But of course, we encourage the subcommittees to continue their business as they see fit until we have that next meeting. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, I would guess probably the best thing for us to do is just adjourn this meeting of the sewer disposal working group, and for Sonia and her group to convene their subcommittee. I guess I would say to the folks here from the working group, if we don't see all of you in person before the holidays, to have a very happy and restful holiday with you and yours. If we see you before the new year, that's great. If not, we'll see you in the new year. So thank you.
Okay.
So
I guess I'll
those
pick
who are
up.
not on the working group or not on Sonia's regulations and legal subcommittee can feel free to drop off now if you like. Of course, everybody's welcome to stay on and listen and participate as well. So the working group, sewer disposal working group, is officially adjourned, and I will allow or hand it over to Sonia to convene her meeting.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Sonia, and I'll be starting up our meeting, Regs and Legal Subcommittee. I had sent out an email to the group. I want to make sure that you guys got it. There's about 5 or 6 different topics that we had loosely discussed in the beginning of when we first started talking, before we kind of went to the funding and process conversation in depth. So what I did was if I could share the screen, I'm not sure if Peter or whoever's on here, if I could share my screen with something that I had sent you guys, which is just basically, I don't know if I did that right. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I don't know what happened to it. Okay, so as long as you guys can see it. So it's an outline. And I just took the very first topic to talk about, and for an example. I'm hoping that this kind of outline will be able to structure the actual recommendation going forward, meaning to write it. So, for example, this section that we want to talk about is training. It's literally underneath the technical stand or in the technical standards under the regulations, B103EB. And what it talks about is phase 1 and phase 2 of training. So what I had put in this right here, there we go, is certain things that the description, the concern. So I know that some of you have some concerns about training. This is just a few of the things that I picked up as we were going through, and I put in there. Then we wanted, because this is about development, environmental health, and environmental protection. So the next category would be, okay, so what is the issue here with development? What would make it easier, more, so again, looking at these boxes, properly trained sanitarians are essential for development and to ensure consistency. And then we go to a next box, which is environmental health and environmental protection, following training in areas of special concern. And then the discussion. Again, this is just a comment. These are just a draft. I'm not saying anything. I actually want you guys to actually take a look at this, but just some discussion and recommendation points going forward. I see that Dante has a question, so go right ahead, Dante. This is definitely.
Yeah, and I don't know when the right time is to weigh in on this. The proposed revision does not eliminate subsection B of B103E. It leaves it as is because the department already recognized that training was going to be a big issue, and there are, more thought and consideration going into it than is reflected in the proposed regulation. We left it untouched, more to come. So I guess the question would be, based on what I'm seeing in front of me, is like, the department's going to need to look carefully over the sort of comments and recommendations on the regs just to make sure that what's represented is accurate. But we're obviously very happy and excited to listen to everybody's feedback.
Yeah, and so like phase 1 and phase 2, I think, yes, that would be like a gimme, but now we're talking about potentially CEUs, going forward, and like maybe even a phase 3.
Yeah,
I want
which
to
is
start
bigger
that
than the
conversation.
regs, right? Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yes. And so now we start the conversation up between everyone. And honestly, I see some people from other committees. Please join the conversation. What do we think about training? And do we need more training? Because that was repeated in all 3 of the subcommittees, actually. So let's start that conversation. Anyone want to go first?
This is Rob. I'll make a comment. So the issue or notion of CEUs, I am certainly generally supportive of professional continuing professional development, and certainly CEUs or staff and local health could certainly benefit from CEUs, particularly given kind of regular changes or changes in both the technical standards and also technologies over time. But I think the resource piece is certainly part of that. Dedicating staff to take the time to absolutely pursue and then achieve the CEUs is obviously going to be a resource cost to local health departments. Just like any of the other existing professional continuing development that staff has to do, like in lead and food. Adding this to it, that already relatively significant list of CEUs needs to be considered, obviously, with that particular object. So that's where kind of the funding piece comes in, or the staffing piece comes in. I think, again, this is kind of a workload creep issue. By itself, sure, it's not a big deal. But you add it to everything else that we're doing, then I think we need to make sure that that's part of the discussion moving forward on that particular item. That's what I wanted to say on that point.
Couldn't agree more, Rob. Couldn't agree more. And I do want to mention something. So at an annual CHA meeting, myself, Bob Smith, and Tom Stanfield, we were actually discussing the septic with all the sanitarians. And we asked a very pointed question: do you feel that you are trained sufficiently after taking phase 1 and phase 2? One person said no, and that's only because they didn't hear the question correctly. So, I think this is a very septic is complex. It's not as easy as just going in there. There's a soil part, there's an elevation part, there's a regulatory part. There's just like so much going on there. I also am very sensitive, and I think, Rob, you kind of touched a little bit on it. We are stressed, and some health departments don't do septic as much as the others. So maybe not even CEUs. And Rob, this is like the discussion I had. Maybe just an annual training. In lead, we do an annual training. Maybe that would be easier. I don't know. But either one, I think, is definitely needed. And, again, open up the conversation for anyone who wants to talk about training. I think somebody's had some training thing with installers. I believe it was Jim or Dennis, making mention about making sure we have some training provided for our septic installers too, or continuing education. I don't know if it would actually go in this regulation, by the way, guys. I know that there's a separate one for septic pumpers and stuff, but that is a thought too. Does anyone? There you go, Dennis. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, just trying to unmute there. Yeah, so training, of course, I think everybody's in favor of it. It's only a good thing. Certainly, I totally understand the perspective of the health departments and budgets and time and who's going to pay for that. And then you have the whole CEU infrastructure, right? Who's going to define a CEU? Who's going to, hey, I took my 5 CEUs. I'm an engineer, but who's going to check that? Did I do it? Did I not do it? So the bean counters, or is it just you do it on the honor system. So there's a lot to it. It's not just like, hey, let's have a CEU system. And I think it should be run by the regulatory folks because they're the ones set up for that and are more in line with that. So anyway, there's a lot to it. I fully support it. I think it's a good thing. And it is a good thing if you mentioned just like the lead training. Oh, we just do that for the regulators. I like where, with the Cower group, we mix, right? We mix regulators with engineers, with contractors, and you can all get to know each other and understand the problems they face. And it just makes it, instead of me being in my silo all day and never seeing anybody, now I'm forced to get out and meet people and hear their concerns. So, just the social aspect, if you want to call it that, is really worthwhile to get us all mixing together. Because otherwise, we're all working hard. We're going to stay in our little office, and the regulators are going to, review plans. Engineers are going to design plans, and the contractors out there trying to figure it out and put it in. But anyway, I strongly support it, but it does bring in a whole bunch of questions. Who's going to run this CEU program? Which obviously takes time, takes money, and that sort of thing. So happy to work with.
More, Dennis. I really couldn't agree more. And one of the things we do learn from each other, and I'll be one of the first people to state that it was the septic installers to train me how to do elevations, in the field. For whatever reason, when I did my phase 1 and phase 2, we weren't in the field. It was a long time ago. And the septic installers, we learn a lot from each other. The engineers, the installers, the developers, we all learn a lot from each other. So I agree. Audra, you're next, and then Rob Miller.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to say that I agree. So ditto to those things. And training is important. Technology changes and science changes, and to the social aspects, it's really just getting out to understand each other and understand and really be able to troubleshoot challenges. So I do like the idea of an annual training instead of a CEU process, only because there's less work on somebody's plate to man that and then keep track of it as well. That is a good lift, but I think the annual training is a great idea.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, so just to kind of build on this continuing dialogue, if I, off the top of my head, were to kind of identify areas in our existing training phase 1, phase 2, which I think are weak and are relevant to relatively high consequence decisions which are made by local public health, it would certainly be in the site evaluation piece of on-site sewage disposal. As those of you who've been through the program know, phase 1 and phase 2, while it touches on it and it talks about it, it doesn't. There's zero actual field practical instruction on it. And I see Matt's popping up now. He may have more updated information on this. Because I've been out of the loop on that kind of training for some time. I do know that there is a regular training event for soil testing, but and for site evaluation, for the site evaluation piece. As I said, those are very high consequence decisions. Those are the fundamental site factors upon which system design is based, and without having clear and consistent standards on how to interpret and apply those factors into a design, then you're going to end up with big troubles down the road. And the other challenge with this is that, the state has it's an extremely varied soil profile statewide. Soil conditions, site conditions are extremely variable. I mean, sites are like a fingerprint. Once you've seen one site, you've seen one site. And so it's a pretty complex issue. And if we were to spend some time trying to identify an area with the greatest need of training and standardization, in my mind, that would be it. And can that be addressed by an annual, multi-day training event? Perhaps. I mean, right now there's, like I said, there's something like that, but it's voluntary, right? Nobody has to go. And so I'd be interested in exploring and expanding something along those lines.
I agree. Matt, do you still want to talk? And Audra, is your hand still raised?
Yeah, if I could just go, no, Rob is exactly right. I mean, there is a need for the field component of that training. Phase one and phase two does a decent job of getting the knowledge to you, but ultimately, getting the field experience is definitely something lacking. My program has ideas on how we can sort of fix that. I think one would be, and Rob did allude to this as well, that we would have the soils training perhaps as a more mandatory type of training where we had that 2 or 3 day course, and obviously again of what Rob was alluding to as far as soil conditions, we'd have to change the locations to mirror the different varied soil conditions across the state. That's one type of training we'd like to do, and then another one was that the facility that was up in Ellington. That would be super. And if you're not familiar with that, they basically had a facility there. This was a licensed pumper slash installer that teamed up with a retired sanitarian that sort of built this facility that had sewage disposal system components actually installed or half installed in the ground, similar to what you would see for a site inspection, and to actually go through and train people with the physical components in real world time. That type of training would be tremendous, and to have that as either regular training or refresher training is definitely would be a goal. I would think, or definitely is a goal of our department in conjunction with the phase one and phase two.
Yeah, just by way of by way of our experience here in our agency, when a sanitarian completes phase one and phase two in our agency, we do not just send them out to start doing site evaluations. We have our own internal standards and field training components. It's not specifically structured, but I'm lucky enough to have senior field staff and that I trust implicitly that if they go out in the field, we make sure that inexperienced staff at least spend a year, I would say, of being either shadowing or leading a site evaluation before we let them go out on their own.
Some
So
departments, unfortunately, do not have that luxury.
we
That's the
do
problem.
not let them go out on their own to do a site evaluations until we are comfortable that they're not going to make a fatal mistake in
Right.
the design and installation of a septic system, because like I said, these are high consequence decisions.
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. Unfortunately, due to the great retirement across the state and people not going into this field as much, we're having that of a bit of a problem for some jurisdictions where they just don't have senior people. And then to couple that with the fact that our office is somewhat distracted on occasion where we can't get out there and help them as much and get them that training, it's not a good situation. So I hear you.
Yeah, like I said, we're lucky to have some senior people still.
You are lucky, Rob.
Yes, we're
I
lucky.
know you are. But you guys just mentioned something that very, very big there, that a lot of the people, the Tom Stamples, the Rob Smith, they're on here, they're retired. A lot of our great workforce that was training the sanitarians are gone. They just went through the pandemic and a lot of people left, even at the both state agency levels. So, I cannot be more, the soil training, we talked about that. If you're doing septic systems, I can't even believe it's not mandatory. One of the reasons why systems fail, right, is because they're too close to restrictive layers or the soils aren't being read right. Even a 2 or 3 day class could be, we're not exactly experts when we go in the field. And the other thing that I think Matt also alluded to is some of these departments don't have somebody that knows septic as well as some other departments. And so it can be difficult, but you might not even get that much septic. So like say you're in a city and you only get a handful. Well, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it, right? So sometimes this training is actually essential for people who aren't doing it all the time. And I think that not only local, but more so the state would want to feel confident that if these guys are doing system reviews, that they didn't just do this 20 years ago, all of a sudden get a system and now have to review and approve a over 2,000 gallons per day system to send it over to Matt. I just wanted to mention that because we did at one point, I think that's one of the reasons why things are coming to a head now. We did at one point have a tremendous amount of knowledge in the field for septic. And ourselves, I have somebody that I've been training for 4 years and we don't send her out onto the most difficult sites. Mind it that we are dealing with like radial flow and all that kind of stuff. But 4 years, we don't have a lot of sanitarians out there. We don't have a lot of sanitarians that are cross-trained. sufficiently out there. Lead is a lot, food is a lot, septic is a lot. And everyone kind of has their niche, but we're all supposed to know everything, about all of them. So it can be difficult on the health directors from health director point of view. Plus the fact, though, if funding isn't allocated or something to that effect, if you can't just put training in there and say, get it done, because that kind of's been happening, right? Get it done and we'll figure it out later. Well, we're not getting that later with a firm training program. So I just want to make sure when we do talk about this regulation, whether it's annual, whether it's CEU, that we talk amongst the bigger group, making sure that there is some kind of funding that goes with it to make sure that our staff is getting trained properly and that Matt has the resources to develop a training program.
Well, if we can expand the site evaluation training piece, and give it a little bit more site specific variety and make it mandatory, I think that would go a long way. And whatever costs are, I mean, that I wouldn't mind saying that. I would have no problem dedicating existing staff time to attend for those staff who clearly need it.
And it could also be more like I don't want to say a fit out because we don't want to say that word, but it could be a primary staff member that does train the rest of your staff members. So, there's definitely different ways we can take a look at how we should try to write this in the regulation. Matt's group, I know that you guys have looked at other training programs from other states throughout the 20-something years you guys have, or whatever, how many years you guys have been dealing with it. Do you guys have any information on the way other states deal with their training and their regulations, like how it's written?
Or how they do site evaluations?
That too.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking Sean got trained up in Mass as a site evaluator. So there was a specific field component with that. Absolutely. That was mandatory as part of getting that certification. I have to ask him, though, I don't know if he has CEUs with that. So, because I think he still maintains that, to be honest with you. So, but yeah, so they probably do have a field component, at least Mass does, as far as I can tell.
Excellent. Does anyone do you guys have any done any research on the actual regulation? I think you're talking about Massachusetts with Sean, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Massachusetts.
Yes. No, you're right. I haven't looked at specifically. It looks like Jim might have some insight on that.
Yep, you go, Jim.
I think it's every 3 years for Massachusetts. They have to retake their training courses for designers and installers. We see a large tick up every 3 years from Yankee, and from them taking classes on the Nauer platform to support that and get their CEUs.
Excellent. Does anyone have anything else to say on this training component that we're talking about? So I sent out the outline. If you guys have comments on it, please let me know, because then we could put them in. And what I was thinking is getting as much as we can done before our next meeting to kind of go through them. This is going to go into the next topic. And I only did one draft, by the way, guys. So that's the training draft is the only one that I have up ready. But the next key item that we had talked about was actually identified by another, I think it was Tom Stanfield or Bob Smith. And it talks about the local health department roles on expansion of soil data and determining restricted layers. They are not here right now. I really am not that familiar with it.
That was the PE one. Is that the next one?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that was me.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
That was me. No worries. Yeah. So I'd highlighted this for discussion in the proposed regulations. Current regulations stipulate that the local public health director, I think maybe the language, shall assure the accuracy of the soil data. Right. That's I could be paraphrasing, but that's essentially what it says. Under the proposed regulation, it expands that role to PEs, to professional engineers. And so that's a big step, and I think it's worth talking about or making sure we discuss it because for decades now, health departments have had sole responsibility for assuring the underlying data upon which these designs are based is accurate, and that's to my point I said previously about the importance of local health being able to do site evaluations, part and parcel. But if we now start to allow professional engineers to take on that role, I mean, there are I think some issues we need to talk out. I myself, for my part, as a local health director who has, who is constantly trying to balance, services, quality of services against the cost of those services. One respect I see the ability to simply have an applicant require a PE to do the soil testing. I could certainly save a lot of staff time if we were simply to establish a policy, administrative policy in that regard. And under the current regulations, it looks like I could do that. If maybe Dante, if she has a different interpretation of that provision, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm not sure which provision you're talking about because there is no change in the proposed regulation that.
Okay, let me pull
Are
it up.
you in the site investigation bit? And Matt's here too, so he can help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
And if you can, it's okay. You're going to put it in, send it to us, and if we have other stuff to talk about while we're here.
Let me see if I can find it real quick.
in the
I got an
chart.
annotated.
While he's looking, I just wanted to ask a quick question because I'm not so sure of the history of all this, but were we part of this so that we could, I don't want to say make people honest, but we aren't engineers and we're not soil scientists. So what is our, I've seen a lot of arguing between engineers and soil scientists and sanitarians in the field. Mm-hmm. It's always been that we have the last say. I personally would like to have a soil scientist when we're doing these larger systems to coach the sanitarians through it. As far as an engineer, well, yeah, I love engineers are great, don't get me wrong, but they are working for someone. So I would love to see what Rob has to pulls out for that, because I think I'd be a little concerned as well. Audra, do you have?
Got it.
Yeah, and so I'll just do a plug here for in a former life of mine, there was an acknowledgement and recognition across the state that as great as professional engineers are, they are not professional geologists, nor are they soil scientists. A lot of times they might contract out some of those services, but I do think a hard look would be given is, everybody has their kind of educational training and background. And so, again, former life, we made a pivot to require professional geologists or a certified soil scientist be part of that process, who is not part of the project. So under our construction stormwater permit, we require a third-party reviewer who is not part of the project or hired or in consult with to provide some input on certain areas.
Okay, so it's section 1913. This is the proposed regs I'm looking at. 19-13-B103E D, site investigation, subsection 3. It says, and I quote, during the site investigation, the local director of health, and here's an underlined provision addition, the local director of health or professional engineer shall, A, assure the accuracy of the findings of the soil test and deep observation pits.
Yeah, that is maybe an error because that's not what my version says. It just says the local director of health, and Matt's nodding his head. So not sure where that snuck in, but it's definitely not our intention to add professional engineer there.
Correct. Well, so it was posted to the Connecticut e-regulation system. I got a tracking number. It was posted in February 25th of 2025.
I hear you, but that's not the latest version we're proposing.
Okay. There we go. Problem solved.
If there's anything else like that we can clear while we're here, that would be great because we obviously don't want to have recommendations in here that reflect like a incomplete understanding of the proposal.
Okay. So
not that it's your fault. It's just probably just a typo. I don't know how it got up there, but I think Matt wants to speak to it too. To explain that this would never be something we put forth. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely shouldn't be there. I'll just give you one good reason why you don't want that. I mean, as if you want it, like Sonia mentioned, to have a soil scientist come in and second opinion, or an engineer or whatever, that's fine. But ultimately the decision should be the director of health or their agent, in my opinion. Okay. Because if you give it to an engineer to do the job of the inspection, that engineer also is going to be a private an engineer for the next property. That's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I was surprised to see it in there. I brought it up.
Shouldn't be there.
And I mean, I'm looking, I guess the February 2025 e-regulation posting is not the most recent one.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a slow process, and the version I'm looking at does not have that. I think, there are other places where we added professional engineers at the discretion of the local director of health, right? So in the middle of construction, if there are issues, and Matt, remind me, there's another place where we added sort of as a way to support you all, right?
Exactly. A tool in your tool chest that enables you to require it in special circumstances, either in the beginning or in midstream. If during a process, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's technical difficulties here that we would like to have an engineer. We wanted to give you guys, and you guys meaning the locals, the authority to actually say you need to have an engineer come in and assist.
Well, shoot, now I feel like I need to ask, where can I get the most latest version of post regulation?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we're not in public comment, so this is kind of in draft and it's not something
so the section I have was the one published for public comment.
Whatever you got from e-regs would have been up, but we're still in the regs making process. And so I can't post another version right now.
I got it. Okay. Well, good. That's
but Dante, Dante, can we share our working draft for their feedback or their changes that we've made that are significant? Okay.
There have been significant, I mean, there was as legislation went through last session, and as we continue to kind of fine tune and clean things up. But I think we can talk about that, Miriam. There could be
whatever you're willing to share, because I mean, honestly, I don't want to waste any time working on something that you guys may have already discussed.
Excellent conversation, because we just took one right off of our plate, guys. That's awesome, just having this one conversation about it. I love it. Thank you for that. I just want to point out one thing. I know I'm just kind of saying everything that you guys already said, but remember, an engineer doesn't necessarily, he or she could be a PE, but doesn't mean they know anything about septic to be coming out there to look at the soils. Just, wanted to put that out there. Audra, are you still wanting to talk, or is your hand just still up? Okay, I think her hand's up.
Nope, clearly a technical difficulty.
Okay, thanks, Audra.
Thanks.
So, a couple of these we might not even be able to talk to about today, because I think getting that from you guys would be great. I don't want to go through things and it may be already fixed. So, and a couple of these things, I think we need to have more of a larger conversation, but to look through these regs first. So technical standards versus codes and standards, we're still talking about that in general, about how to be part of the process. So I don't even know I know where it is in the technical standards. I know where it is in the regulations, the actual section, but I don't know how we're going to go about that. And I do believe that's kind of more of a full group discussion on going forward.
I guess I'm not sure what the issue is there, Sonia. In terms of, additions to foundational codes, I mean, there's already a reg review process for that piece of it. Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about the technical standards review? I know they have a different process too through the advisory committee.
Correct. And that's one of the things that I think would want to be looked at, because it's advisory. And, building is a little different, and there's other ways of doing it. Matt, I don't know if you can speak to any of that.
Are we talking about potentially system formalizing this technical standard advisory committee a little bit more than it is? Is that what we're kind of exploring?
Yes. Yeah. Matt?
That sort of has happened over the last couple of years. In general, it's been more formalized. I wouldn't, that's not a bad thing, and we're working in that direction as it is. I think the only thing, as far as how many meetings we have and things like that would be hard to pin down, just because it depends on the number of topics that are presented. It could be a year that we don't have a lot of stuff, so we don't meet as often. But so we kind of want to leave, I would think it would be best to leave it open as far as, but as far as like when we publish, we have certain publishing requirements about a notification of the meetings and things like that, which we put on our website. And then we're supposed to put it on the state Secretary of State website. At least that was something that I was made aware of within the last couple of years. So yes, I'm not opposed to that. I think that would be the direction we're going in anyway.
Does anyone have any other comments? I'm trying to, I guess, formalize
Yeah,
advisory positions.
So I'd be curious. I mean, it's been a while since I've been on that committee, but back in the day, we didn't necessarily vote on anything. You know, the topics were brought up. We had a broad discussion, and basically, you know, a consensus was built through those discussions. I don't know, I don't know how the structure operates now, but as you alluded to, it's been a little bit more formalized. But for example, does committee members actually vote on specific recommendations?
Yeah, that's a good question. That has not been either historically or recently a part of the process as far as voting goes. What we are definitely more formalized in that we have identified the specific members or representatives of the committee. They're groups, obviously, that are stakeholders, and then those stakeholders choose or select people to represent them at the meetings. I will say that participation could be better. We don't get a lot of feedback from those groups, and I understand everyone's busy and things like that, but that would be more helpful. And and unfortunately, then when we do get feedback, it's usually after the implementation of the technical standards when things are already done, and then they come out of the woodwork and start telling us this should be changed. And we said, well, you should have talked to us a month or two ago when we were going through this process. So that definitely needs some work, but no voting. That has not been part of the process.
Yeah. I'm just exploring, since I haven't been involved in some time on current process, and trying to. I'm kind of just wondering. I mean, I hear that from your comments that kind of exploring and maybe improving formality we may benefit, or the system may benefit from. But I'd be curious as to kind of what that additional formality would entail, if not voting or official appointments by members by the commissioner or the bureau chief or whoever. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitting at the wall now to see. I mean, what kinds of components may make sense and which ones wouldn't.
Well, we're all ears. I mean, everyone can give what they think would be a good idea, and we can take that into consideration for sure.
And Rob, just so you know that there is a position for CADH, another one. Just let you know, I'm all alone there now, so it would be great if another health director get on there. And Matt's absolutely right. We used to be much more robust, but then the pandemic hit, so it's not. Again, a lot of the stuff just kind of broke down with the pandemic. We definitely met more often. We definitely met.
So Matt, do you feel like you need, from your perspective, more support in that regard, in terms of any changes they have the support that they need, that is needed to avoid any future pushback or liability?
Well, one of the things I would recommend has nothing to do with my department at all, would be to have all of the stakeholders, be almost forced. Like if we present an issue at these committees, a lot of times there's just silence. Nobody responds. So we really would want a response from everybody. So in a sense, it almost is like voting. At least we get your opinion. We're not getting that. So we would present something. Okay, this is one of the things we'd like to consider. Where's the feedback? And then there'd be crickets. And so I think what I would recommend is that the committee, members and their representatives are more active in providing, especially a written response would be the most helpful. That way then we can have more discussion. It just seems like people are just sitting there. There's not a lot of participation. I think there needs to be more participation, active participation with every member.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So it sounds like some kind of acknowledgement that they received and reviewed
Yes.
the topic. And if they're silent, then that's tacit. Then that's tacit support.
Agreed.
And how do you document that, or how do you make that a matter of record so that moving forward you don't have to worry about somebody coming back at you with criticism?
Thank you. Exactly.
Okay.
David has something to say. David?
Is that all right? Sign?
Go for it.
I don't know if you guys remember the last year, how many you were there, Sonia. Matt, do you remember how we were asking for red line versions? So we were asking, can you tell us exactly what's going to happen? And we couldn't get that. And then when we wanted to debate it, what I remember, maybe I'm remembering wrong, I forget, was it Lori who said, you know, why don't you, this is going to be a reg change, so why don't you deal with this legislatively? And isn't that exactly what happened? So what I think we're really talking about is if we could get a more formal committee going here, wouldn't it be beneficial to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Well, I think if it gives Matt's section and staff the support they need to make these changes in the technical standards, I'd support that.
Which Lori are you talking about?
Lori Matthew, I'm sure.
Okay, so Lori Matthew hasn't been at DPH for several years. Is this in relation, David, are you asking about like the code advisory committee?
I am. So at the code advisory committee, we had a whole series of meetings that led up to this. Was it, Matt, going back from 2 years anyway, or Sonia?
Yeah, I believe it was October 11th, and it was, or there was one with Lori Matthew, and that is what she said. I just don't remember how many years ago. 2, possibly 3 years ago.
It was exactly with respect to these, what we're talking about now. And so that was the feedback we got. So, you know, with all due respect, I think people tried to provide feedback, and I don't know, I would say it didn't flow very well. There's probably a better way that we could do it.
Okay. So I think we have to also understand that, like, as a regulator, we can't take every piece of feedback and incorporate it. I think it's always helpful for us to hear the feedback and understand challenges, but there's not always going to be a pathway to implementation. And I think, you know, we kind of discussed that some during this past legislative session too, Dave.
So how would that look in the regulations? So, I mean, I'm kind of sensitive to a lot of what was just said. I don't know if we would be here if that was a little more formal in the last couple of years, as well as the pandemic that obviously had given us some issues. That being said, that whole thing that we're talking about, committee, code advisory, should it be a requirement to at least confer with them? Can you put that in the regulations, or is that not allowed? I would think that would maybe a legal question.
The Code Advisory Committee is not established or defined in statute. So I defer to Dante on kind of if it can be referred to in legislation.
It would have to be legislation, not regulation.
Yeah. So the Code Advisory Committee is pretty unique in that it's something that the department has decided to do so that we can get that feedback from stakeholders. And, you know, making it a legislative body is going to create more kind of loopholes and whatnot on the agency's side. The goal for us is really to get that feedback from you all. And it's kind of like a stakeholder engagement process, similar to how we do public comment with regulations and everything. So that's really what the Code Advisory Committee is. And unless you establish it officially in legislation, it can't really be referenced in regulation.
So
yeah,
I wonder
Miriam,
if
agree. That's how it is. And I think, you know, without having it in statute, that's what allows the kind of flexibility that Matt has been able to use. I mean, my perspective on it over the past year or so of working on the proposed regulations is that, it's beneficial to have sort of a spontaneity to it where, midway through the year, there were technical standards that were revised to align with the transfer of jurisdiction. And, I think Matt and his group really wanted a lot of feedback at that time on sort of the meaningful content that would go into there to support the transfer of jurisdiction. So,
Matt, thank you, Dante. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. Just one quick thing. I think what Dave might be alluding to, and I agree, there's a trade-off. There's a trade-off here, guys, with the process the way it is. We get your voice heard in a much quicker fashion, whereas if we went more formally, legislatively, we would take away some of that flexibility. So you got to kind of weigh those two prospects. But the thing that I wanted to mention too was in regards to the oh geez, I'm just losing my train of thought here. I'm trying to think of 10 different things here. Wait a minute. So we were just talking about in the reg. Oh, Dave, I'm sorry. So Dave, I think what Dave was trying to say, and it's fair. I think what he wants from us when we do these changes to have sort of a red line document once those changes are sort of finalized that then the committee can review. And I think that's not necessarily a bad request. I think that's actually a good thing. I think perhaps the last time, Dave, that might have had more to do with some technical difficulties on our end. But I think that would ultimately be the goal. So in other words, just if everyone understands this correctly, technical standards is a 70-page document. So when we make these changes, we're not changing all 70 pages. So what the argument would be was that, hey, where are those changes? I don't want to have to read through 70 pages. So, and I think that's a valid argument. So we could probably work with you to get that type of thing for you. So just want to put that in.
Well, and Matt, when we get a list, a summary that says, hey, we want to change something from X to Y, really the devil's in the details, how you put those words into those technical standards, right? Affects it. So
Exactly.
you really can't give good feedback unless you can see the actual, I guess, standard, how we will read it and how we will have to deal with it in the field.
Yeah, so David, that's something that we're going to have to talk about internally because that would certainly be a shift from how we do regs now. We hear you that it's sometimes that it is challenging to understand, how regulatory changes look on the ground. So that's something that we will discuss internally and bring back to the group when we can kind of come up with a proposed solution there.
No, that'd be appreciated because it's not a regulation, it's a standard, and we're told that the value of it is that it's flexible, it's a standard, and we can all work together better on it. So we need to find a process where that actually happens.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Rob, go ahead.
So when I was bringing up this topic initially and talking about additional formality, certainly citing them, authorizing the committee and the regs was part and parcel to that, but I do value the flexibility that the current structure provides, and so I was thinking, that's already administratively managed by the department, and because of that flexibility, it seemed like it would be reasonable for it to go ahead administratively to add a little bit more formality to it, in a manner that maybe at least achieves some of what I think we've talked about here in terms of maybe mitigating the amount of blowback you get after decisions are made. Just a thought.
Does anyone have anything else to say on that one? Opening it up. Okay, so we only have a couple more. Well, we have another one that kind of dovetails into this one, and we had spoke about it briefly. A final decision. Now I know about the appeals process. The state it's for a final decision, for issuing a final decision is an order when we have to basically say no to an applicant, right? An adverse decision. But there's a lot of decisions that don't need to be made at that level. For example, somebody challenging a septic system repair. We go to Matt and Matt's group because it's the only one we go to. It's the only place we have, even though there's only 2 or 3 of them, to ask these questions. And yet they're still going to go higher than him or go to a legal office that may or may not have the technical septic knowledge to make that decision. So when we're talking about codes and codes advisory group, any kind of group, is there any way we can figure out a way to have some kind of group to review these, meaning people that work in the field, engineers, soil scientists, kind of like we're doing right now, to make some of these decisions? And the reason why I'm saying that is because I am sensitive to when the developments come in here. And it is difficult to figure out. A sanitarian, we are already discussed that we need a lot more training. So the decisions that the sanitarians are making may or may not be right, or may need more information, or may need more guidance. So that was what I was talking about when we talk about a legal process or a final decision. Also, and this would be in the legal section that we talk about in the code regulations. So I do want to bring that back into there is a section that talks about issuing an order as an order that is adverse to the applicant. Is there any way or somehow to put it in there that we have a different process for these things that are very simple to answer, but that we can also get a technical answer from? Like, so for example, another example, when we have a decision, it would be great for us health directors to be able to give that information. Like, say that we ask you guys a question about the technical standards and you guys can give us an actual legal a legal statement on it. It would be great for us to share it with our other health directors, because we all get into similar situations wherever we are. I mean, obviously there's environmentally sensitive areas and there's regular sensitive areas, but just having some kind of body made up that can go to these developer questions and these environmentalist questions that may not need an order. Anyone can answer that.
I can speak to, I think there are two things you raised there. The first one is, I think you're looking at B103E sub K regarding the rights of the applicant when a final decision of the local director of health is made and the appeal process. So we can't change that, right? We can't just say we want somebody else to make that decision. I mean, the way that local health decisions are made and appealed are set in statute. So statute would have to be changed to exempt this one type of order to go through some other process. And it's hard to imagine that happening. I don't have an opinion on it one way or another, but as far as the reg is concerned, we're stuck with that structure. The second piece where I think what you're getting at is there are questions of interpretation that many people might have the same question, and you want there to be some kind of advice that's communicated to local health or to all the stakeholders so that everybody's on the same page about what something means or how something should be applied or interpreted. I think the one way you could think, so there are two things are coming to mind. One is that, when and if these regulations ever get through the finish line and there's implementation training, there can be sort of Q&A and some support there, as well as in whatever other trainings get built up to support this work in the future, because it sounds like that's going to be a huge part of the recommendations of this group. Very important, sounds great. Then the other thing is you can ask for a declaratory ruling where, either our legal office or the attorney general can, if there's a dispute on an issue, can theoretically sort of resolve this general question of how do I interpret that piece of law. But there's a whole process there. I can look into it for you. I don't know if that's as far as you really need to go. Typically that comes up when, maybe two agencies don't agree on something, or, it may not be that useful, but I hear what you're saying. I think it's useful information that, maybe the same sort of question comes up over and over again and there's not enough clarity. And if that's the case, then maybe what we could also do is look at the places in the regulation where that comes up frequently and think about, can we phrase it better in the first place to prevent that kind of, challenge with interpretation or having different readings of something before we even get to that. Like that would be my goal as somebody who, who is involved in writing regulations. I would like it ideally to be clear enough that we don't get to that. So if folks on this group or in the broader group or other stakeholders have, I know we ran public comment, but that's what we learned. Like Matt said, we want to hear that sooner rather than later so that it's not, finalized. And then we hear, oh, wait, I have this view about this, or I'm confused about this. So that's another opportunity to kind of address any of those interpretation concerns before it's finalized.
Thank you. 1 second, Robin, I'll get right to you. So Dante, actually I do think the final decision should go through you guys, the last decision adverse to an applicant. I'm just wondering if there's something that could be in between, because when you are going to that point, you've pretty much exhausted all your resources, and we do want DPH's appeal process to back us up. Again, it took me 5 years, but it was definitely needed, and DPH held my hand. I'm talking about something like, wait a minute, this isn't the definition of bedroom. Matt and Sean and Matt, we're constantly calling them, and it would be, some of the developers are the big questions. No, this is 13 inches or this is 18 inches to naturally occurring native to site soils. There's a lot of technical questions that could be answered by technical people versus going all the way to a full-on appeals process. That's kind of what I was saying. And the other thing is, great, I totally agree, circular letters would be helpful for a lot of the health directors. And the only reason why I'm even bringing that up is because we go to town, they're the ones who are taking the regulations and looking at them and interpreting for us. And that does lead to difference. And, it would be helpful for the developers, environmentalists, if we all had, this is what was stated in case, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what we health directors can base on. Because what we use our circular letters, I constantly bring them up, even from the 90s, to explain to an installer or applicant that this is the reason why it is the way it is. So thank you, though. That was like awesome. And I do want to actually talk about that going forward. Go ahead, Rob.
There we go. Unmuted. I'm not sure if this is exactly on point, I think, but maybe indirectly related. But this is my interpretation of what you're saying, Sonia. If you're looking at an potential adverse decision against an applicant of some sort, or somebody who's potentially in violation, and you call the department up, whatever relevant section may be, doesn't really matter, could be Matt, could be any section, and asking for an interpretation on a relevant provision of the regulations or statutes so that you feel like you're comfortable with issuing an adverse decision. There are sometimes, when staff may be hesitant to provide that because they feel like they may end up being called to the adjudicator's office and providing technical support to the adjudicators, and they don't want to be caught in a crossfire. And so that's, from our perspective, problematic.
Understood.
We're trying to make the right decision. It's in the betterment of an interest of public health and of the applicant and the residents. And so I just wanted to share that perspective. After all, the department issues circular letters all the time on various topics, interpreting regulations and statutes. So I'm always frustrated every time, that's the concern. I think that's maybe more applicable after we render some kind of adverse decision, and then the staff needs to say, well, wait a second, I might be called. We made the decision already at that point. But that being said, even if we already rendered the decision, if we get new information, there's nothing keeping us from rescinding the original decision administratively. So whether we get the feedback or interpretation before or after shouldn't really matter, because we can always change our decision based on new information, no matter where it comes from. And so I feel like, we're in a partnership here. I don't want to waste everybody's time by rendering a decision that's going to put time out of the adjudicator's docket for no reason if you guys aren't going to support it. So that's my 2 cents on this.
Good point.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Good point, Matt. Rob. Matt, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention just some of the stuff you're talking about. That actually has been my objective from day one. Unfortunately, I've not been able to implement it. And that is, I wanted to get sort of an indexed FAQs on our website, and which would include obviously past and new circular letters. And so it would be where an index where any of the local health officials, or anybody for that matter, members of the public, can look at and say, okay, this is a particular question I have, and it'd be indexed, and you can go and find it and say, well, this is how it should be handled, or whatever. Matter of fact, right now, I've been working with my staff. What we do is we take the emails that we receive and those responses, and if there are reoccurring issues, we're having a repository right now and putting those, and eventually I'd like to take that information, get it into one spot, and then be able to put that somewhere where you guys can access that and say, okay, what do I do if we have an easement where it's state-owned property, or blah, 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 just whatever unusual situation you have, or in your particular case that I know what you're talking about, where you had a homeowner that doesn't like this homeowner's what they're doing, and they say they want to, what can we do to stop them from doing that? And maybe we could have a response. Obviously, in certain cases, we'd be consulting with our legal office on that in terms of, what would make the most sense and how you would handle that. So I think that's kind of what you're looking for too, which I think is a great idea if we had the time to do that, a repository to get this information where you can go to anytime, and it would be in writing. You can actually have it, and it would say, okay, this is what and we used to do it in the past. If you remember Frank Schaub, his letter, one of his best letters was the B100A interpretation from many years ago that gave you all different examples.
Yeah,
and I
awesome.
still refer to that. That is
Me
like,
too.
that's one of the best letters ever written by this department.
Yeah.
And anyway, so that's an example. I think we should do more of that. Yes.
So let me ask you a question. How would we, because we want to make sure that it's set somewhere in the regs or technical standards that will basically, how are you going to fund yourselves to do that? It's all this we talk about is all extra work. I just want to make sure that we somehow get that so that can actually happen for you, Matt. So where would, again, I just in the recommendation, is it the actual regulation?
I would say articulate a recommendation. I don't think this is something that needs to, or really could realistically live in regulation. But I think it's a strong recommendation. It's great to articulate the kinds of resources that will help local health be successful with this kind of common challenge with the septic work. And so, and it's something that I would imagine that the other subcommittees would be happy to kind of band together on, because it has to do with training and funding, and there's a lot of overlap there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Does anyone have anything else to state on that one? Okay. Well, we're going through these. So, because we only got 15 minutes left, I will just make up these outlines to send them out to the group. Feel free to write what you want in. I will try to paraphrase a couple of the discussion recommendations that we had discussed. For example, with this training one, annual might actually work better than CEUs. I'll put it all in there. Our next meeting, we have 2 more to talk about too, but sensitive areas and areas of special concern, we may want to meet up with nitrogen environment for that conversation, because I feel like that both of our groups need to talk about that after this morning. And then B100A, which I can actually handle talking about when we meet again. We have our next meeting on the 17th. There was already, I believe, a scheduled sent out, or I will do one if not. Then we'll take a look at this. Like I said, I'm going to make a couple of these, send them out to you guys. We already got through one of them that we don't have to do. Great. One of them may more be a recommendation versus an actual change in the regulations. And then we still have 2 more to go to. And like I said, the big one, sensitive areas of special concern, is where we would be looking at that in the regulations. Definitely a conversation that we should have with David's group. And then B100A, I will talk about that myself on the 17th. Do you as a group think that we need to have an additional meeting in between, or do you think we can communicate by email? And this is a question to the group.
I think we're good with email, in my opinion.
Everyone else good? Okay, so again, sending this out, I think that this outline that actually Bob Smith kind of really spearheaded, we can take them now and put them in a couple paragraphs, as soon as we go through these exercises. Okay, well, exercises being going through the comments that we discussed, 2 more areas we still have to discuss, we do on the 17th. And then whatever we had discussed now, I will bring into our next meeting on the 17th, send it out beforehand. You guys can add whatever, maybe you didn't think about it today and you want to add it, great. And then we'll kind of go through them real quick in the beginning of the meeting and then hop on to the next two. And I will see if nitrogen environment can maybe make that meeting, or maybe we need to do a separate one with them, which I will be in communicate with Jim Paris, who is, and Dave Potts on that.
Just a quick question, Sonia, on the special special conditions piece. I mean, what we're talking about is just creating a new special condition, right? Recommendation, which creates a new special condition, right? Which is linked to the nitrogen piece, right? Is that what effectively what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
and I can shoot out that
clarifying.
area. You know, I know Rob and I are very familiar with this with Matt. Just another area to the both groups. Say, you know, this is where it would be plugged in. So now let's have a discussion of what it needs to be there, whether it be flooding or whatever. Does anyone have anything else to state? Have any comments on how we're going? If you want to change the direction, I'm just kind of going with what we have. Totally game for any changes anyone wants to make. Please just let me know. Even if you want to send me an email, that's fine. Does anyone else have any comments, questions? No? No? Okay, so we will see each other on the 17th again. And I believe, like I said, I believe that invite went out already. I will move to adjourn this meeting unless anyone has any issues with that. No? All right. Have a lovely evening. See you guys soon.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks.